Hello once again. Welcome once more to the Northworthy Sagas and Stories channel. I remain your host, Tyrkir. Please smash the like button. Please subscribe. This is a story concerned with the most mischievous of all the ancient gods of the North. The god named Loki, the trickster. Now Loki, like many of the gods themselves, was partly of giant birth. And he was a friend to the gods to begin with, but later on he became evil. His parents were Farbauti and Laufey. Farbauti, his father, his name means cruel smiter, a nickname which describes the lightning flashing in the sky. His mother, Laufey, her name means Leafy Island. Again, the poet's name for a tree. And as we know, when lightning strikes a tree, fire can result. And so it's no surprise that Loki himself had a fiery disposition. And as I've said, when he was a friend to the gods, when he was tamed and under control, then he was of great help to them. But finally, when he ran rampant, then he destroyed all before him. Loki had a wife. Her name was Sigyn, and between them they had a son. His name was Narfi. A good-looking young man, very much like his father, for Loki was pleasing and handsome in appearance, at least to begin with, before time and fate left their mark upon him. But Loki, sad to say, was not always true to his wedding vows. And there came a time when he was not seen in Asgard for many long months. First 6, then 9, then 12 in all went by. His wife and son were concerned, and they went to Odin, the All-Father, to see if he could find the whereabouts of Loki, god of mischief. So Odin sent out his 2 ravens, Hugin and Munin, mind and memory. One flies as fast as the speed of thought itself. The other remembers all it sees. They flew out all across the 9 worlds of men and women, gods, goddesses, giants, elves and dwarves, even into the land of the dead. And then at last they came to a certain place in Giant Land, where, outside a great hall, they saw Loki playing with his 3 children, with a giantess nearby. The ravens returned to the land of the gods and reported what they've seen. We've seen Loki Laufeyarson there in Jotunheim, Giant Land, they said to the All-Father. He was there with a giantess, and you can tell they were more than friends. And what's more, they had 3 children with them. Each one of them was a terrible monster. I'm sure this will be of great concern to you, most noble Odin. So Odin sent for Loki and his children, had them brought to Asgard, and he called a council of the gods. And when the gods sat there together, and they saw the offspring that Loki had spawned, then they quaked in their boots, for these children were terrible indeed. There was Jormungandr, the huge monster, the great serpent, Midgard's Orm, the Middle-earth worm. A snake so huge he encircles the whole world, holding his tail between his fangs. There was his brother, an enormous wolf, Fenrir, the fen dweller. Already he was growing in size, and it was easy to see that when the wolf had reached adulthood, when his jaws opened, they would scrape the sky itself. And their sister, Hela, was terrible to behold. Half her body was alive, but half of it was blue-black, rotting and decaying, the colour of death. Now the gods, they consulted the runes. They cast the sticks upon the ground. They listened to prophecies. They even spoke with the dead to learn all that they could of what the future held for Loki's progeny. And they discovered that the wolf would eat Odin, that the serpent would be the death of Thor, god of thunder, on the final day that men call Ragnarok, doom of the gods, the end of the worlds. And while they had no wish for this to happen, the gods knew that they could not kill the creatures there in Asgard, for one drop of their blood would defile that sacred ground and would hasten the day of doom that much more quickly. So Odin, he took the serpent and he cast it out into the world of ocean that encircles the wide Middle Earth, the orb of the world, and it sank down onto the seabed, tail between its fangs, and remains there, except for the time when Thor calls it fishing, until the day of doom. And as for Hela, Odin knew what to do with her. He took her 9 days' ride, northwards and downwards, into the 9th world itself, into Niflhel, or Misty Hell, a cold, bleak landscape of rime and freezing winds. And in the heart of it was her kingdom, Helheim, the abode of the dead, where cowards, thieves, and murderers go when they die. Her hall is there. The walls are woven from living serpents. Their venom drips from their fangs. And all those who've died either a coward's death or of sickness or old age wade through streams of freezing poison. Outside, the river called Cussing. There, by the strand of corpses, you can hear the sound of sword blades clashing in the water. And not far off, the dragon called Hateful Hacker gnaws upon the bones of those who have become its meal. But there was one more of Loki's children to deal with, and this one was much more of a problem. This was the great wolf Fenrir, the fen dweller, who grew in size every day. And to begin with, although the gods knew what a danger he presented, they had no idea of what to do with the great wolf. Now we have already heard of the birth of the monstrous children of Loki by a giantess, Angerboda, distress bringer. The terrible offspring that they bore between them were Hela, the goddess of death, Jormungandr, the Middle-earth worm, the great serpent, and Fenrir, or fen dweller, the great wolf. As we've heard, Hela was sent to the ninth world to become the ruler of the underworld, the goddess of death. The Middle-earth worm, cast into the great ocean, lies there on the seabed, tail between his fangs. But the great wolf, their brother, he remained a problem for the gods to solve. And for a while, they had no solution. Every day, the wolf ate more and more, grew larger, stronger, and fiercer. The gods knew one day the wolf would eat Odin, king of the gods, in the last great battle between monsters and the Aesir. However, if they were going to bind the wolf, they had to use guile. Now one day, the wolf was picking over the remains of his dinner that he just consumed with great glee. At a party of the gods, Odin, Thor, Frey, and Tyr happened to be walking by, carrying a great chain. "What's that you've got there?" asked Fendweller, the great wolf. "What, this?" said the gods. "Oh, this is something we forged in our own workshops. It's a fetter. We're sure it'll come in handy, since it's one of the strongest that we can devise. However, against a creature like you, strong as you are, it would be no problem at all to break it." Now Fenrir regarded this as a challenge. "Bring it here to me," he said, "and bind me with it. We'll find out how long it lasts." And so the gods did so. They wrapped the chain around the great wolf, the chain called lading. And when it was fast about him, the wolf, he shrugged, he took a deep breath, snapped the links apart, and slipped out of the chain. "You'll have to do better than that," said the wolf. And so, a day later, the gods returned with a second chain called Dromi. "Here you are, Fenrir. This one we've made twice as strong. However, you've grown so much since yesterday. Chances are you'll be strong enough to shatter this the same way that you did lading." Now Fenrir was no fool. People say if someone has a wolfish wit, then they're cunning indeed. And Fenrir was no exception. He had the mind of a hunting animal, a predator. And he could see that this chain might present a problem. However, he was hungry for food, but also greedy for fame as well. For this reason, he's also called the Fame Wolf. And he knew that if he could break this chain, the poets of the northern world would sing of it for generations to come. So he allowed Dromi to be locked about him. And this time, he braced himself, all four limbs digging into the ground. And he heaved, and he strained, and he burst Dromi apart in a shower of links. And for this reason, whenever someone accomplishes a feat with great effort, it's said that they've slipped out of lading or burst out of Dromi. However, this still left the gods with the same problem they'd had before. The wolf was still free and unchained, growing all the time. So they sent word to the dwarves in the dark home on the borders of Helheim. There it is. You'll find the greatest craftsman in all the 9 worlds. And they found a dwarfish smith who accepted their commission. And he forged for them a new chain. This was called Gleipnir. This chain, constructed with the most magical arts, had 6 components. It was made of the sound of a cat's footfall, the roots of a mountain, the sinews of a bear, a woman's beard, a fish's breath, and the spittle of a bird. And because all of these things that were used in the making of the chain Gleipnir, that's why none of these things exist any longer here on the Middle Earth. And this is the proof that everything I'm saying to you, this whole story, is certain to be the truth. And the chain was a strange one, being made from things which did not exist. It was made from the finest links, barely visible when they caught the light. But when they weren't, it seemed as though the chain was hardly even there, as though it only half existed in this world and in another one. It was so slim, so fine, it looked like a silken ribbon. And when they showed it to Fenrir, he looked at Gleipnir and said, "This band looks like nothing. I can see that if I break such a slender bond, there may be little fame in it for me. However, if this has been made using subterfuge, using sorcery, then it may indeed hold me fast. And if that's true, I don't expect you or any of the gods to let me free anytime soon. It'll be a long time before you come to release me. If I'm going to do this, I need a guarantee. I need a surety of your good faith. If one of you will pledge their honour by placing his hand inside my jaws, then I'll agree." And the gods looked at each other. And to begin with, no one dared to place their hand inside the wolf's gaping maw. But then Tyr, god of war, of oath-keeping and justice, the knife god, he stepped forward, placed his hand inside the wolf's mouth. And the gods wrapped the chain Gleipnir around the wolf. They secured it, and this time, no matter how much he stretched, pulled and pushed, whatever he did, no matter how he exerted himself, Fendweller could not break free. And the gods, they took 2 great stones and they attached them to the chain and secured it far down beneath the earth on the borders of Helheim itself, in front of a great cave called Gneipa. And as they did so, the wolf snarled and snapped at them. And so, to make sure he was subdued, they took a shining sword. They jammed the pommel in his lower gums and the point in the upper gums, and this acted as a prop, keeping his jaws fixed wide open. And a stream of saliva rolled out of his mouth forming a great river called expectation. And so, there he remains, until at last one day, when the horn called deafening is blown by Heimdall, watchman of the gods. After the awesome winter, at the end of the world, he will run free on the day of Ragnarok itself. But for now, that's the end of the story of the chaining of Fenrir. Thank you for listening. And please, don't forget to click on the notification bell. Thank you.